Hello and welcome back to another great episode of hashtag Screw the W2. And before I hit record, I just noticed this. I did not plan this at all, but this is actually the third guest whose name is Chris that I've had on the row for this show. Didn't plan on it, but like I said, noticed it 5 minutes ago. So with that, Chris Borden, welcome to the show.
If we're okay, we can use my middle name. My middle name is Kaanoheo Kala. If you can pronounce that, we can just stick with that.
Uh,
Or we can stick
uh,
with Chris.
Chris K. Can we do that? Yeah,
Yeah, there you go.
exactly.
Chris K. That's fine.
So, well,
Absolutely fine.
Chris, oh, go ahead.
Sorry. Thanks, John. Thanks for having me on. Really appreciate you taking the time to kind of get my side of the story on the whole W2. And I gotta say, I love the title that you have for your podcast.
Yeah, I've been debating if I don't know if it's possible to trademark a hashtag or not, but it might be one of my things to look at later.
Awesome. Awesome.
Well, Chris, maybe like I said, you and I connected on LinkedIn. I think it was I don't know if it was one of Yona Weiss's challenge or group we were together or whatnot. But regardless, can you take us back to what was your previous W2 job? What was it? Where were you? What was like an average day for you?
Okay, so I had a pretty interesting career. So when someone asks me what I did before, I like to kind of have fun with it. So I say I'm from Hawaii. So again, my middle name, if that is right away, I don't live in Hawaii anymore, but I like to say I sold spam and rice. I
Spam and
was
rice.
in
Okay.
I sold spam and rice. I was in the grocery industry. I was in
Ah,
retail for I would say close to 35 years. I started really young as my first job.
okay.
Started in retail. And I started as a management role, as a lower tiered management. And prior to me leaving my W2, I ended up with honestly a bunch of different titles. I was a CEO, CMO, president, vice president of multiple different organizations.
Okay.
So I was the president and CEO of selling spam and rice. That's what I like to say.
So you were a legitimate spammer, basically.
I was a legitimate spammer, yes. So,
So,
so the typical day, I mean, obviously, so I worked my way up. The typical day, it was on the W2 side of things. I'm gonna be honest, it was both rewarding as well as there's a lot of pressures there, especially being on the CEO title. This is a large company. We did about $1 billion total in annual revenue. So large
wow.
company had almost shy of 4,000, maybe closer to 3,500 employees at any given time. We were the second largest grocery retailer in Hawaii, which
Okay.
was it's so again it was rewarding. The rewarding portion of it, and the part that I still miss to today is the fact that the relationships that I built with the people that I worked with, the team members that I had, you can't necessarily get that outside, especially on the entrepreneurial side. When you shift to that entrepreneurial side, you don't. And if you got to the corporate level that I got to, you don't have a team of 3,500 people that you're going to work with, unless that's a goal. That can always be a goal that you shoot for. It's
Hmm.
definitely not our reality as it sits today. In fact, we just got our first two employees 2 days ago.
Oh,
So
really?
yeah, so it's not so we're not like four strong in two of our businesses compared to 35, 3,600 strong. So it's a big difference.
Gotcha. So, all right. Now, with that, you mentioned you kind of started your way up and worked your way up in the company. And, after, like you said, 30 some years, we're talking multiple decades. What was the, moment, or maybe there was a series of moments, like, or did you have I got to get out of here moment, or I can't do this until I'm 65, 70, etc.?
Well, I mean, the good thing is I started young, right? So I got into management pretty young. I think I think I was in my mid 20s when I got to the C-suite level.
Okay.
So I've been more on the corporate side for a rather long time.
Okay.
Um, and for most of my career, so I would say I was on the C-suite level for about 25 years,
Okay.
give or take a few years. You stop counting. I think you stop counting after year 5. And he's like, okay,
Yeah.
it
Five
is what
plus
it is
years.
at
We
that
just go
point.
from
Yeah,
there.
yeah. You stop counting at a certain point. So what the I mean, looking back, like I said, looking back on it was a super close knit. We had a lot of employees, but the way I structured my leadership style was more on a family oriented structure. It was never the top down structure. My door was always open. It was one of those environments that was more fitting of, especially back in Hawaii, we would call it ohana. It's a pretty popular term, even in the continental United States. So we'd have that family feel to the environment. Roughly about 6 years prior to my exit, it switched over. We had an ownership change. There was some bad medical and health issues that forced the change, and
Okay.
it got sold, and it went over to a large publicly traded company.
Gotcha.
And if anyone has been in that situation, everyone knows that once it switches to a publicly traded company, it
Yeah.
goes from being that family oriented, most times, not all times, but most times it goes from that family oriented, even if you're like in an ESOP, which I know there's some stories out there, it just changes in a heartbeat, and it changes more towards numbers.
Hmm.
Employees are not assets at that point. Employees are liabilities, and they're looked at as liabilities. So, and
Hmm.
I stuck with it. I tried to make that cultural change and have it fit on the corporate side. And I just got to the point where it's not working on the publicly traded side, and
Yeah.
management above me just wouldn't necessarily listen to the cultural impact. And it did impact it didn't only impact me. I was the CEO. We actually had all of our C-suite executives leave the company just one at a time. I
Wow.
was honestly the last, I believe, executive to leave the company, because I tried to
Yeah.
hold that whole thing together. So that was a large that I don't think that was the exact pivotal point. But again, so we started our entire lives earlier. So I got into the executive roles early. My wife and I started we planned it. We had kids early. So another huge factor for us was our kids left. They left Hawaii. They didn't want to come back to Hawaii because cost of living is so astronomical there. And
Hmm.
so it was kind of both. It was a lot of it had to do with the fundamental structure of changing over to a publicly traded company. And then there was the component I wanted to have more time and spend more time with my family.
Gotcha. Yeah, it makes sense. And interesting how you mention a lot of that and very much echoes that cultural shift from to a publicly traded company, or in my case, it was a private equity company where you're a liability, all they care about is the bottom line, and that's pretty much the end of things. So I can definitely empathize and sympathize with you there. So once that realization happened, Chris? And I know you said, fortunately, you're at this time, you got in early. Your kids had grown up, moved from Hawaii, so they're, thankfully, we're in a position like, well, I got to stay here. I have to support my kids. They're going to college next year, whatever. But once the realization happened that the culture's gone, it's not coming back. What were your steps that you took to, get out of the rat race or exit that environment?
Funny story. Well, I don't know if it's necessarily funny, but we just honestly took the leap, and we said, we have to do something different. There was
Okay.
honestly no steps. And everyone's journey is going to look different.
Hmm.
Um, and don't get me wrong. I mean, we just took the leap. My wife left her W-2 as well.
Oh, wow.
She worked for the military, contract work for the military. And you guys, I already explained what I did. And we just both said we want to just make a complete change, and we both shifted out of our W-2. So again, she was contract military. I sold spam and rice, and now we do real estate investing full time. It's I think the biggest transition is trying to get as much education
Mm,
into the whatever field you're looking at transitioning to. For us, it was real estate. For everyone, it's going to look different.
sure.
There's still, regardless, I think there's still times where, right, it's true. If you guys haven't read Rich Dad Poor Dad, please go
Yep.
read it. But it's the philosophies that he points out on that golden handcuffs is it's super
Mhm.
true, right? And it's maybe not intended, but you get a raise, you get promotions. When I go back and look at it, like if I could have known what I know now, because I invested a whole bunch of education into more myself, tax
Mhm.
savings, investing, real estate, different type of real estate assets. So I spent a lot of time more recently doing that, and
Right.
I started preparing. We knew that we wanted to make the shift, so I would say about 6 months to a year out, we started just digesting tons of information. I would
Mhm.
say in that 6 months, I probably read 100 different books. I listened to probably 1,000 different podcasts
Yep.
just to get my mind right and see, okay, this is the transition that I want to do, and this is the journey that I want to move on. But like I said, everyone's journey is going to look a little different.
Mhm.
Everyone's position where they're at is going to look a little different. And those golden handcuffs are super real, right? As you're moving up, as you get
Yep.
promoted, you have that self-fulfillment internally inside you that says, well, the harder I work, the more promotions I'm going to get, the more money I'm going to get.
Yep.
But you're not necessarily seeing what happens on the other side of the spectrum. So I
Mhm.
made decent money as obviously as a CEO of a large corporation. But in the short time that we've transitioned over to investing, we've tripled our overall net worth.
Wow.
And but that's a point of me spending 80 to 100 hours on a
Mhm.
company and making them millions of dollars,
Yep.
as opposed to spending that exact same resources on myself and
Mhm.
concentrating and making sure I reap the benefits of all of the work that I'm putting into helping myself, my family, and because we're doing real estate and any other partners that we have. So
Mhm.
I guess that's it in a nutshell.
No, no, yeah, and thank you for sharing that. I always just think of the old adage joke, so to speak. If you die at the workplace, your company will have your job posted before your obituary is posted in the paper. And sadly, that is very true. It's like
Yes,
you should was it you need to work to live, not live to work.
exactly,
So
exactly.
now, once Chris, you obviously, and your story is a little bit different, where both you and your wife decided, hey, we got to make a change, we got to leave our W-2s. uh Kind of a little different twist from what I asked my guests. Do you remember your last day as a W-2 employee, and then was it the same as your wife's, or was it one retired before the other?
Well, we sort of planned it out, like I said, about 6 months, somewhere between 6 months to a year. I don't know the exact time frame
Sure.
that we were going to make that transition out of the W-2 and move, right? So we did both, right? We completely relocated to a different state and started a brand new business in a different state. So again,
Wow.
yeah, I mean, it's not like we just left our job and started a new job. We completely uprooted everything and left everything that we knew to completely have a new start and just refresh, just recharge and refresh ourselves on life in general. I She actually left her job. It was a contracted work, so her contract ended. It just so
Okay.
happened that it ended earlier, and then she just didn't renew up on her contract. So
Okay.
I want to say she was roughly about 5 to 6 months prior to I did.
Okay.
My last day, honestly, was a bunch of tears
Okay.
from tons and tons of people.
Mm,
I still help. Like I said, the biggest part that so I still consult for the company that I worked for in the past,
okay.
um, because it was for me myself specifically. Like you leave a job, but it's super hard to leave the family and the friends
Mhm.
that you've created over the years. Again, leaving a job, especially from a publicly traded company, is one thing. It's like completely different. I don't necessarily care that much.
Yeah.
But leaving the people and the friends, and like I said earlier, I spent more time at work working 180 to 100 hours than I did with my family. So they
Mhm.
innately became part of my family and part of what we call Ohana. So that's probably the hardest part for me. And it's still today. And literally I was on the phone with one of our who is now the CMO of the company right before this call. So it's
Mhm.
something that I mean, I hold dear to my heart. And that was probably the hardest thing. So a lot of tears.
Sure.
Um, and yeah, so that's pretty much it again in a nutshell.
Sure. No, obviously, we've you and I both have shared, the pros and cons and what we miss from our W-2s and making that shift, especially leaving the culture behind. But since then, however long ago that was, what's been the best part of your journey since you were able to leave the W-2 behind and start fresh, like you said?
Oh, like I guess, like I said earlier, I spent so much time at work. Now it's my work is my home now. So the wonderful thing is I get to spend more time with my family, which I never
Okay.
had that opportunity. I don't, so my business was a little unique, and if you guys are familiar with Hawaii, they're all separate islands, right?
Yeah.
They're several separate islands. We actually had stores on every single island.
Oh, wow.
My family lived on one island, and I worked on different islands.
Mm,
So that was the harder part for me. Like I said, that was a larger portion of the whole mindset shift. Is I need to. My kids are older. I wasn't really there growing up while they were growing up as much. I would typically only be home on Saturdays and Sundays, if even that. Sometimes not even that. Like COVID happened, I was still at the W-2 at the time, and I was away from my family for almost 4 months because they
wow.
literally locked everything down and you couldn't travel.
Oh,
So
geez.
that was a large regret for myself. And now the biggest thing is I get to spend more time, right? I use this joke now and then. If you have you can never buy time back, right? You take
Yeah.
a you take a you take a $100 bill, slap it on your boss's desk, and tell him, "I want 8 hours of my time back."
Yeah.
He's not gonna know what to do whatsoever. So
Exactly.
now that was huge for me. Is just I deferred time with my family, which is not something I would suggest at all, to be able to move myself up in the corporate ladder. And I gave up that time away that I'll never be able to get back. So now it's more about spending more time with my family, having that freedom to, if I need to, right? I don't have to. I can take lunch off if that's a thing, and I can go
Yeah.
spend time with. I can go play basketball with my son, or my now I have a grandson, so I can spend
Oh,
more time with him,
congrats.
which I couldn't have done prior.
Sure. No, yeah, it makes sense. The, true time freedom. I mean, there's only 24 hours in a day. And for all of us, while we don't know what the end date is, there is a finite amount of time we have on this planet. So why give away that finite resource when truthfully money is infinite, especially when the Fed is printing
Yeah.
trillions upon trillions every year, but that's a discussion for another time. So, now, Chris, maybe if any one of my listeners, maybe they're starting to, they kind of feel, your experience, maybe they're in a similar situation. Maybe they're like I was, geez, when was that? 8 years ago, when surprise, a private equity company bought you, and they want to leave. They know they have to make a change, but for whatever reason, they just feel stuck. It's the golden handcuffs. It's the fear, uncertainty, whatever it is, whatever the reason is for, I think I have to stay here. What words of wisdom or what piece of advice would you give to them?
I think, well, again, the golden handcuffs is a real thing. So,
Yeah, it's more like a
I mean,
golden ball and chain. I mean, handcuffs, you
yeah,
can pick your way out of. The ball and chain weighs like 50 pounds.
yeah, exactly. I don't. I think I don't know if it matters where you're at in life in general. I think the biggest thing is reevaluating your goals and reevaluating, and you should always do it. You should consistently reevaluate your goals. But more importantly, I know it's a cliche. They say it's a cliche, but I say reevaluate why you're doing what you're doing, and get super deep with it. There's a thing called Dean. I'm gonna butcher his last name, but he has the seven levels deep is his theory, and you're taking that why down seven different levels, and really start asking yourself. So why am I at the job? What typically is money. Why do I need
Yep.
money? And then you're gonna say bills, and then you keep compounding that why until you get to your real reason why you're doing what you're doing. A lot of times for a lot of us, for me it was anyway, it's having that time freedom and spending more time with your family. And then you'll eventually get that. It's going to be different for everyone, but that helps motivate you to get you out of the position that you're in. If you're
Mhm.
truly working to be able to support your family, and
Yeah.
that support is the why, is because you want to be able to give more to your family, be more, do more, then you have to really realize what that is, and you have to dig deep. So
Yeah.
I think that would be the biggest thing. And then I also love, Denzel Washington had a quote in one of his speeches where he says, "Without commitment, you'll never get started. But more
Ah.
importantly, without consistently, you never finish." So it's not
Hmm.
easy, right? I mean, even being an entrepreneur, it's definitely not an easy road. But as long as you put the commitment in and you stay consistent with it, it will happen. I mean,
Hmm.
that's the biggest token, is staying consistent with it. I love that quote. I try to live by it as much as I
Sure.
possibly can. And yeah.
Yeah, no, I like that too. I think I might have to do that as one of my motivational Monday memes that I do on Instagram, which hint hint to anyone watching Instagram, W Freedom Nexus could always use more followers. So now as we finish this up, Chris, and again I want to thank you for taking the time to share your story with my listeners and hopefully inspire others to screw the W2. But I kind of call this the unscrewed moment as we're going into 2023. Kind of leave this as a sounding board. What are you working on? Is there any new projects you want to talk about? Or if anyone's interested in reaching out, partnering, investing, learning what you're up to, what's the best way to find you?
So yeah, I'm probably starting way too much businesses. I think we're starting our eighth business now.
Oh, wow.
We're starting to add. Yeah, it's only been about a year and a half now. So we're loving it. We're loving every minute of it. A lot of it. I mean, we're starting. I think we're going to start our second nonprofit.
Oh,
So
cool.
there's a lot more to life than just money. That's another
Yeah.
thing. There's a lot more to life than just money. At the end of the day, you definitely can't take it with you. It's the impact that you're making on the world that's more important.
Hmm.
Um, as far as the things that we're working on, probably the newest thing that we're working on. So we do a lot of investing. We're starting a fund.
Oh,
It's going to be a funds to funds model where we're
okay.
investing in both debt as well as equity. So pretty diversified portfolio, somewhat risk. I mean, it's going to be risk adverse because 60% of the portfolio will be on the debt side of things
Oh,
in
sure.
first lien position. So if anyone's interested in that, they can definitely hit me up on LinkedIn. It's Chris Borden on LinkedIn, or my website, www.ftlinvest.com. FTL stands for Family Tree Landmark.
Oh, cool. I was just gonna ask what does FTL stand for, and you beat me to the punch. So, but yeah, anyone listening or watching this, I'll make sure I have that in the show notes so you don't have to hit rewind and it's like, was that a T, an E, a G, or whatever. So, with that, Chris, thanks again for joining us, sharing your story with my listeners, and be sure to tune in next Saturday for another great episode of hashtag Screw the W2.
Thank you very much, John. I really appreciate it.